Chosen one, God has been calling your name 7 times this week, not loudly, not in the dramatic ways that are easy to recognize, in the quiet spaces, in the moments that felt like they were pulling you somewhere without telling you where. You may have called those moments distraction. He was calling them direction. You may have called that pull restlessness. He was calling it a summons. And now, here, this moment, not the 6th attempt, not the 8th, the 7th. In the ancient language of sacred covenant, 7 carries the weight of completion, the fullness of divine intention, arriving at its appointed threshold. He does not reach for someone 7 times because he ran out of options. He reaches 7 times because the message he carries is proportional to the assignment he has prepared. And the message he has been holding across all 7 of these attempts this week, it is not a warning, it is not a correction. It is a word that will rearrange what you have been carrying. The window he has opened is not closing yet, but he says this now because windows move. You are here, right now, exactly where he knew you would be. Stay. Every word of this belongs to you. Everything you are about to hear in the next several minutes is completely free. No cost, no conditions. If at any point as we go through this, something in your spirit stirs and tells you there is more you need, the information is in the description below and in the pinned comment. Only follow it if you feel led. Before we go any deeper, I want to tell you what this message holds for you by the time we reach the end. You will understand exactly what each of the 7 divine attempts this week was and what they were collectively building toward. You will know why God chose the number 7 specifically, and what that choice reveals about the intention behind everything he has been doing this week. You will hear the actual word he has been carrying across all 7 of those moments, stated plainly and specifically for you. You will receive a practice for recognizing his voice more clearly starting from today. And before we close, I am going to speak something over your life that I believe you are going to carry long past this moment. Stay through all of it. Every part builds on what comes before, and none of it is wasted. Before I tell you what God has been trying to say, I want to show you where he was speaking from. 7 is not a number he chose casually. And the signals he used to reach you this week were not casual either. They were specific, intentional, placed with precision into the texture of your ordinary days in a way designed to reach you even through the noise. But they arrived in a language that is easy to miss if no one has ever shown you what to listen for. So let me show you now. Maybe this week you noticed a pull in a direction that made no logical sense. Something in you leaned towards something without a clear reason, without an explanation you could hold in your hand and examine. You tried to name it, and the name kept slipping. So you filed it under confusion and kept moving with your day. But something about it stayed with you. And even now, sitting here in this moment, there is a residue of that pull, somewhere in the back of your awareness, still present, still unnamed, still waiting to be understood. The thing about that kind of pull is that it does not make sense to follow, not on the surface. The logical mind has reasons to dismiss it, but something in you keeps returning to it. And here is what I want you to hear. The confusion was never in the direction itself. The confusion was in the gap between where you were standing and where he was pointing. That gap closes. It always closes when you are willing to return to it. You called it confusion. He was calling it direction. Maybe this week you felt an unexpected wave of emotion with no clear source attached to it, not tied to a specific event you could point to. Just a sudden ache that arrived and settled without telling you why, or a sudden peace that came over you in the middle of something completely ordinary, or a sense that something was shifting beneath the surface of your life, moving in a direction you could not yet name or fully see. Here is what that really is. Your spirit is more attuned than your mind gives it credit for. When something significant is in motion in the unseen, the part of you that lives beneath your thoughts picks it up before your conscious mind does. It registers it as emotion, because that is the language it knows how to speak in, the one that bypasses logic and goes straight to the place where truth lands. The wave was not random. The wave was your spirit, saying, "Something is happening, something is moving, stay awake to this." You called it a mood. He was calling it spiritual sensitivity, your inner frequency quietly adjusting itself for what he was about to send. Maybe this week there was a creative restlessness in you, a feeling that something was about to open, something was about to move, something important was standing just at the edge of your current reality and waiting for you to notice it. Not anxiety. Anxiety presses and closes. This was different. This expanded. This was more like the feeling of standing at a threshold you could sense without being able to see where the door was. The people who carry a particular kind of calling carry a particular kind of restlessness that arrives before the calling becomes visible. It is not the restlessness of someone who is lost. It is the restlessness of someone who is standing at exactly the right place, at exactly the right time, and has not yet been told they can step through. You called it directionlessness. He was calling it positioning. Maybe this week the same word or the same idea reached you through more than one completely unrelated source. A phrase in a song you did not choose to hear. A sentence someone spoke to you who had no idea what they were carrying in that moment. A thought that arrived in the middle of something else entirely and stayed much longer than thoughts usually stay, sitting in the back of your mind and refusing to leave quietly. Each time it reached you, it landed in the same place. Quiet, but unmistakable, like a hand placed gently on your shoulder from behind. When God is trying to deliver a message and one envelope does not open, he sends another. Not from frustration, from precision. He knows exactly which form of the message will reach which part of you in which moment. And he keeps sending until one finds the opening you have available. You called it coincidence. He was calling it a message sent through multiple forms until one of them arrived in the right place at the right time. And maybe this moment, this specific hour, the fact that you stopped here and gave your attention to this, maybe even that itself felt like something more than coincidence. Think for a moment about what had to align for you to be here right now. The timing of your day, the particular state of your spirit in this specific hour. The fact that of everything competing for your focus, this found you and you stayed with it long enough to arrive at where we are now. That alignment was not accidental. It was arranged by the same hand that has been arranging the other 6 moments all week. You called it scrolling. He was calling it arriving. Arriving at the appointed place, in the appointed hour, at the threshold of the 7th. Chosen one, those were not 5 separate random events. In an ordinary week, those were 5 of the 7. 5 of the specific ways God leaned toward you through the fabric of your days and whispered the same message in a different language each time. Let me stop here for just a moment. I want to acknowledge something before we go any further. You have been carrying a great deal this week, even if the people around you have not named it. Even if you could not fully name it yourself. Something in you has been working harder than the outside showed, and something in you has been waiting, quietly, and without anyone knowing it was waiting, for someone to say that the wait is not meaningless, that the quiet is not abandonment, that the distance you have felt is not the conclusion of your story. So let me say it now, plainly, before we take another step. The wait is not meaningless. The quiet was not abandonment. And the distance you felt was preparation, not rejection. Take one real breath before we continue, just one. Let it settle wherever it needs to settle. Good. Because what I want to show you next changes the shape of everything you just received. Those 5 signals have a common origin. They share the same fingerprint. And to understand that fingerprint, to truly understand why God chose 7 and not any other number, I need to take you back to the root of something written in the original language of the sacred texts. The Hebrew word for 7 is Sheva, but in ancient Hebrew thought, 7 is not simply a number for counting things. It carries the weight of a concept deeper than quantity, rooted in the idea of fullness and completion, of arriving at the place where what was being held is now fully released. where what was being built now stands complete, where the cup is no longer filling but overflowing. In ancient practice, when two people entered a covenant of deep commitment, they would sometimes count out 7 as a way of sealing it, not because the number held power in itself, but because 7 represented the full weight of intention, the completeness of what was being given. To act in sevens was to say, I am giving you everything I have been holding, every layer, every ounce of what this means to me. That is what the 7th attempt carries today, not a last effort after 6 failures. The full weight of everything God has been building, layer by layer, across every moment. He used to reach you this week. When he acts in sevens, he is not trying until something sticks. He is completing something that was always meant to arrive at exactly this. This pattern is written all across the ancient record, and there is one account in particular that I believe God is replaying in your life right now. A prophet stood on a mountain after 3 years of drought, not just for the land around him, but in his own spirit. 3 years is a long time to hold a promise against a visible reality that offers you no evidence. 3 years of praying into what appears to be an empty sky. 3 years of sending your hope in a direction that shows you nothing in return. And yet this man did not revise the expectation downward. He did not update his belief to match what he could see. He held what he had been given, positioned himself on that mountain with the full weight of expectation, and sent his servant to look toward the sea. Once, the servant returned with nothing to report. The sky was clear, the horizon empty. Twice, still nothing. 3 times, 4, 5, 6 times the servant came back with the same answer, and 6 times the prophet sent him back without lowering his expectation and without softening his instruction. Look again. On the 7th time, the servant returned and said something he had not said in any of the previous 6 returns. He said, "There is a cloud, small as a man's hand, rising from the water." That cloud, small enough that you could almost miss it, became the rain that broke a 3-year drought. What looked like an empty sky to the servant was a loaded one to the prophet. What felt like 6 repeated failures was actually 6 layers of a structure being faithfully assembled in the unseen. What seemed from the outside like God not answering was God building the architecture for the 7th moment to carry the full weight of all that had come before it. The servant went back the 7th time, not because he was certain. He went back because the prophet sent him. And the prophet sent him because he understood what the servant was still learning. Divine completion requires the return. Fullness arrives on its appointed count, not before and not accidentally. Now let me tell you something about the signals you experienced this week that explains why they felt harder to receive than they should have. The reason those 5 moments arrived in forms that were easy to dismiss is not a spiritual problem. It is a frequency problem. And this is where the science and the sacred begin to speak exactly the same language. Dr. Robert Lake spent 34 years of his research career mapping what he identified as the decline effect, the systematic narrowing of the brain's highest operating frequency over time. Researchers at MIT, Princeton, and Harvard, among others, documented this frequency as the gateway to clarity, intuition, and what some in the field began describing as divine reception. Children carry it naturally and fully, and then the world gradually turns it down, not through fault or failure, but through the accumulated weight of a life not designed to sustain it. Dr. Lake built from that research a body of work that spans far more than today can hold. He mapped this as a layered sequence of recalibration, a process where each phase opens a door that the next phase walks through. What we are going to open together today is the first of those doors. I am coming back to what he developed in full depth later in this message. If something is already stirring in you as you hear this, the details are in the description below and in the pinned comment. But right now, I want to close this portion with something I have not said yet. The 7 attempts God made this week were not about what he wanted from you. Each one was about what he has been preparing for you. And if you had understood from the beginning what was being built across all 7 of those moments, across all that quiet, across all that subtle reaching through the ordinary hours of ordinary days, you would not have been afraid of the silence. You would have known it for what it was. Stay. What comes next changes the weight of the silence into something else entirely, and you are going to want to be present for every word of it. Before I show you what God's actual message is, and I am going to show you completely, there is one more thing I need you to understand first. Because once you see this, the 5 signals you just heard about will stop feeling like a list and start feeling like architecture. The silence will stop feeling like silence. And the weight of 7 attempts will settle into something that makes an entirely different kind of sense. This is the piece that changes the shape of everything that came before it. Here is what I need you to hear. The 7 attempts were not God trying to reach you and missing. Each one was a layer. He was not failing 6 times before finally getting through on the 7th. He was building 6 times before arriving at the 7th. And the difference between those 2 pictures, the difference between a series of failures and a deliberate architecture, is everything. What felt like silence was actually selection. He was not absent in the quiet. He was identifying the precise moment when the fullness of what he was carrying could land in the exact place inside you that had been made ready to receive it. What felt like distance was actually design. He was not far, he was positioning, moving the pieces of your life, your circumstances, your perception, into the configuration that would allow the 7th moment to mean what it needed to mean when it arrived. What felt like prayer going unanswered was actually preparation overflowing. The answer was not delayed because it was forgotten. The answer was being built into a form that would serve you far beyond what any early response in the first moment would have given you. What felt like being missed was actually being measured. Every quiet moment, every subtle reach, every signal that felt like it almost got through but slipped past, was God taking the full measure of exactly what you needed and preparing to deliver it complete. At the 7th, when the fullness had been assembled, the servant on the mountain did not fail 6 times. He faithfully returned 6 times so that the 7th could carry the weight of everything that came before. And the cloud that appeared on the 7th look was not a last-minute provision pulled together at the final hour. It was a rain that had been building behind an unseen sky all along, waiting for the 7th look to call it down. There is another account in the ancient record I want to bring to you, not on a mountain this time, on the open water and in the belly of a place no one would choose. A man who ran from the direction God was sending him, who found himself swallowed by his own resistance and carried to the exact location he had been trying to avoid. God did not abandon the message when the moment was difficult. He did not revise the assignment when the receiver was not yet ready. He found a new form, a new moment, a new way to deliver what had been given to be delivered. He tried again, because the message he carried was proportional to the assignment of the person he was sending it to, and neither the message nor the person could be replaced. This is the nature of what has been reaching you this week, 7 times. Not from a God who was losing patience, from a God who was completing an intention that was always meant to arrive at exactly this. And I hear the Father saying something specific to you today, something I believe he has been holding across all 7 of those attempts, waiting for this moment to say it plainly. He is saying this: I have not been distant, I have been building. What I am placing before you right now, this clarity, this season, this opening that is in front of you today, I have been preparing since long before you understood what it would require. You are not late, you are not behind, you are not someone I lost track of or passed over or moved on from. You are at the 7th look, and the cloud is rising. Stay with that. Now, let me tell you something about the word ASAP in this message, because that word is not meant to produce fear. It is not meant to press you into a corner or make you feel that you have failed some window that has already closed. It is meant to tell you that a window is open. And windows, by their nature, move. The urgency God carries today is not about what you have failed to do or what you have not yet become. It is about what is positioned in front of you in this specific season. What is available now could not have been available before the sixth attempt. The architecture required all seven, but the seventh has arrived. The fullness is here, and there is a season open in front of you that is open specifically because of everything He has been building in you through the quiet. He is not asking you to rush. He is asking you to receive now, while the window carries what it currently carries. And before we close today, I am going to speak something over your life that I believe you are going to carry past this moment. Something I have been given to say over you specifically. Stay. Let me take a breath with you here before we move forward. Not to build something new, just to name, in plain and simple terms, what you have actually received so far in this message. Here is what this week was actually about. God has been reaching toward you through 5 specific types of signal, not randomly. Through the pull that made no logical sense, the emotional wave without a source, the creative restlessness, the repeated word through unrelated mouths, and this moment of arrival, each one intentional, each one a layer. And the reason they felt harder to receive than they should have is a frequency problem, not a faith problem. The channel of reception had been narrowed. The signal was clear on his side the entire time. 3 things you can now carry forward. You know that the number 7 is not a casual divine choice. It carries the weight of completion, of fullness arriving at its appointed threshold. You know that what you experienced this week was intentional, not coincidental, and that the subtlety was a product of the channel and not the sender. And you know that the 7 attempts were not about what God wanted from you. They were about what He has been preparing for you. You are not a random recipient of this message. You are the one He was reaching toward, and what comes next is for you specifically. Now, the people who are most sensitive to divine signal, the ones whose calling runs deep, whose inner knowing is acute, whose spirit picks up things others walk past without noticing, are also the ones most affected by the frequency barrier I have been describing. The very depth of what makes you a chosen one, the sensitivity, the perception, the ability to feel what others cannot name, that same depth makes the static louder for you than for most people. And for a long time, you may have read that static as evidence of your own spiritual failure, as proof that you were missing something others had. You were not missing anything essential. You were receiving through a channel that had been progressively narrowed. Earlier, I mentioned what Dr. Robert Lake spent his career mapping. Let me come back to that now. The decline effect. The way the brain's highest operating frequency, the one researchers at MIT, Princeton, and Harvard documented as the gateway to clarity, intuition, and what some in the field began calling divine reception, is systematically reduced as we move through life. Children arrive with it fully active. By the time most people reach adulthood, it operates at a fraction of what it was, not because something was taken from them, because the world they moved through did not sustain it. Dr. Lake spent 34 years documenting this and developing a response to it. A response he shaped into a 7-minute audio track, listened to through headphones, that uses a technology called brain entrainment to restore the brain's gamma frequency. Over 18,000 people have now used it. Less than 4% have ever asked for a refund. That is not a promotional number. That is a pattern. A pattern that tells you the people who use this experience what they came for. As part of his work, Dr. Lake also mapped what full recalibration looks like across multiple phases, protocols like the youthful brain that address deeper layers of brain restoration. But what we are focused on today is the first door, the one that begins the process, the one that matters most right now. Let me tell you about one person who came to this. A woman in a season that felt very much like your own. Months of praying over a significant decision without receiving anything she could call a clear answer. She began using what Dr. Lake developed consistently, not dramatically, Not with a sudden visible shift in the first week, but within a few weeks, a quiet clarity arrived in a place inside her that had been silent for a long time. Not clarity from the outside, clarity from within. The decision made itself obvious in a way that had not been available to her before. I am not telling you that will happen to you in the same way. I am telling you a pattern that holds across thousands of people who have used this tool. Now let me tell you what it actually costs, because this is where I want you to pay attention. If you were to seek this kind of frequency restoration through the approaches most people consider, a therapy session designed for clarity and mental grounding runs somewhere around $150, and you would need multiple sessions to see any sustained effect. A weekend spiritual retreat built for this kind of recalibration can run between $400 and $800. The well-known meditation apps that target stress and focus, the monthly subscription runs around $15, but none of them were built to target the gamma frequency specifically. None of those alternatives were designed for what this addresses. Dr. Robert Lake compressed 34 years of specific research into a 7-minute audio track and set the original price at $49. Already a fraction of anything you would pay anywhere else. But for the people who find this message, he made a specific decision to bring it lower, not for commercial reasons, because his mission has always been reach. For you, today, it is $39, one time, not a subscription. No monthly charge waiting for you. And with it you receive 4 resources at no additional cost. The first is an audio track built specifically for children, calibrated for a brain before the decline effect takes hold, valued at $19. The second is the original book that the film The Secret drew its inspiration from, a text about the practical mechanics of alignment and provision, valued at $20. The third is a 22-minute guided visualization across 4 areas of life: financial, relational, physical, and what he calls inner peace, valued at $29. And the fourth is a daily habits guide, built around sustaining the frequency restoration once it begins, valued at $12. That is, $80 in additional resources, included with a $39 purchase. And if after 90 days you feel that this did not deliver what you came for, you receive your $39 back. No conditions, nothing to return, because it is digital, and you keep every bonus regardless. He calls it his way of making sure the risk stays entirely on his side. Dr. Lake also mapped what he calls the alignment phase of restoration, something he approached through a protocol he named Destiny's Embrace, which builds on what gamma reactivation opens. But that comes when the foundation is established. Today, we begin with the frequency. This window and this price are not available anywhere else. They are specific to this message. Before you search on your own, I need to tell you something important. There are imitations of this technology circulating online, versions that claim to do what Dr. Lake's work does, but are not built from his research or his specific formulation. The only version carrying 34 years of documented methodology is accessed through the link in the description below and in the pinned comment above. The Genius Song. If your spirit confirms that this is for you, and only if it confirms that, the information is there and waiting. Only move when you feel led. Now, here is what God has been trying to reach you to receive through 7 attempts. Not just the science, not just the story of the prophet on the mountain, the actual word. You are not someone who has been overlooked, you are someone who has been prepared. The silence was not absence, it was formation. The distance was not rejection, it was construction. And the assignment he is positioning you for requires someone who was shaped in exactly the kind of quiet you have been living through. The kind that strips away what you were performing for other people and leaves what you actually are underneath. You are a seer, someone who perceives what others cannot name, who holds the clarity to name it anyway, even when naming it costs something, and that is who he was trying to reach this week. You are a truth carrier, someone who cannot inhabit a false version of themselves and cannot stand by while others believe something less than the truth about who they are, and that is who he needs you to hear today. You are a voice, the one who speaks what others feel but cannot find the words for, whose words move past logic and land in the place where change actually happens, and that is who you are. And you are a hope restorer, the one who revives what others have given up on, whose presence in a room changes what feels possible in that room, and that is the calling he was building toward across all 7 of these attempts. He needed you to hear this, not someone generic, you, specifically. Someone whose assignment is proportional to 7 attempts. Going forward, here is how you recognize his voice more clearly. It will carry consistency across unrelated sources. It will hold a peace that does not match your circumstances. And it will point you towards something that requires more than you currently believe you can give, while also telling you, quietly, that you already have what is needed. Those 3 things together are the signal. When you notice them again, do not file them away. Stay with them. Return to them the way the servant returned to the sea. Let me share something before we close. Someone I know of, and I offer this as a pattern and not a promise, described experiencing 7 distinct moments of divine pull in a single week. They named each one. They chose to remain with each one rather than dismiss it or rush past it. There was no dramatic outcome in the first week or even the second, just a deepening quiet. And in the 14th day after they began sitting with what had been reaching for them, something they had carried in prayer for 8 months arrived. Not loudly, with a certainty that felt like something long held, finally settling into its right place without effort or announcement. I cannot tell you it will happen for you in that same time frame or in that same form. I can tell you that what happens to people who make themselves available to the 7th attempt is different from what happens to people who do not. The practice for making yourself available starting today is simpler than you might expect. Once a day, before the demands of the day take your full attention, settle into one breath and say from genuine intention, I am open to what is reaching for me today. Then go about your day. That is the posture. That is what receiving looks like from the inside. Take one more moment before we close. You came into this with something heavy, something that may not have had a name when you arrived. A great deal has moved in the space of this message. Let that settling happen without rushing it. Let it complete. Now, in your mind, I want you to return to the moment that brought you here today. Whatever it was that made you stop and give your attention to this message. And I want you to see the signal that has been reaching toward you across all 7 of those moments this week, finally finding the opening it needed. Not a dramatic light, not an overwhelming sensation, just a settling. A sense of the message landing in the place inside you where it was always meant to arrive. You are not imagining a future right now. You are receiving a present. Something is here that was not here when you first sat down. Stay in that for one moment. Good. Before we close, I want to hold a posture of gratitude. Something has shifted in the space between the first word of this message and where you are sitting now. The 7th attempt found its opening. You were here to receive it, and I do not want to pass that without acknowledging it. Picture what you have been carrying since before this week began. The weight of the quiet, the weight of wondering whether the distance meant something it did not mean. Picture it falling from your shoulders right now, not because you earned its release, because it was never the final word of your story. The 7th attempt does not end a conversation, it opens one. Let it go. And I hear the Father speaking this over you now. Receive it. You are seen. You are sent. You are sealed. I did not reach toward you 7 times because I had nothing else to attend to. I reached 7 times because you are the one I have been preparing something for, and the 7th attempt did not find you by accident. I knew you would be here. I prepared the ground for this moment before you arrived at it. And I need you to carry this forward. I am not finished with what I am building in you. Not even close. The seventh look called down the cloud, and the rain that follows belongs to you. And so it is. Go from this place differently than you arrived. The seventh attempt has landed. What comes next? Receive it. If something settled in you today that needed to settle, if something in you shifted while you were listening, type the words "I hear you" in the comments right now. Let it be your declaration that the seventh attempt reached where it was meant to reach. If what was shared here carried weight for you, pass that weight forward. Someone in your life needs to feel what you just felt. And share this message with the one person who came to your mind as you were listening. The one who told you recently that they feel like God is not listening, that He has gone quiet, that they cannot find the connection they used to have. Share it with them. They need to know about the seventh attempt. They need to know that what looks like an empty sky from where they are standing is a loaded one from where the prophet stands. The cloud is rising. The rain is coming, and they are closer to the seventh look than they know.